Good evening. I'm Geoffrey Harpham, Director of the National Humanities Center, and I want to welcome you to this, the first day of a long-awaited, richly deserved springtime. There's no turning back. It's really spring now. And we are celebrating with the third and final annual conference on the theme of human rights and the humanities. This project was formulated several years ago in the conviction that the concept of human rights, while it was ubiquitous, was actually poorly understood because the dominant discourses on the subject were those of public policy and law and tended to exclude the perspectives offered by humanistic scholarship. The goal of this project is to underscore the importance of the humanities in any adequate concept of human rights. The first of our conferences in 2012 focused on concepts of culture. The second last year focused on the notion of the state. And this conference will stress the species, the ideas of humanity and human being that are invoked or involved in any concept of human rights. This project has received support from Duke University, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, North Carolina State University, the Carnegie Corporation, and the Research Triangle Foundation, and I would be remiss if I didn't say they all deserve a round of applause. Our emphasis on the species has led us directly to this year's keynote speaker, Steven Pinker. Now, this is not the first time Professor Pinker has visited the center, and as he may recall, it's not the first time I have introduced him. That was 12 years ago at Tulane University when he was asked to give a lecture in a very prestigious series. The speaker the previous year was Stephen Jay Gould, the charismatic evolutionary biologist at Harvard University, who gave a talk on evolution. After the talk, questions were invited, and a gentleman stepped to the microphone brandishing several sheets of paper, on which was written, he said, the names of 132 eminent scientists who believed that creationism offered a better account of human origins than evolution. Who were these people, Gould demanded to know? They could not be good scientists. But many of them have won Nobel Prizes, other awards and distinctions, was the response. After a few such exchanges, Gould had just had enough. Look, he said, his customary cheerfulness abandoned. This is not a democracy. I've got the microphone. You have to sit down. At dinner that night, I confessed to Gould that I had never actually seen anything quite like this at an academic event. Yeah, he said, well, I've just had it with that guy. He's been following me around with that stupid list for the last 4 lectures. Now, this story is relevant in this context only because the next year, the speaker in that series was our guest this evening. And while we were backstage before the event, I recounted this event to Professor Pinker, to which he replied, you're not going to get anything like that out of me. I'm Canadian. I'm sure I have no idea what he meant. At last year's conference, we had Michael Ignatieff, the eminent Canadian intellectual and political leader, who argued that states must be permitted to be, as he put it, wrong about human rights, and Daniel Bell, born in Canada but teaching in Beijing, who contended that the Chinese meritocratic system of government, as he called it, had a lot to recommend it over the democratic system of, for example, this country. So this year, we are continuing our tradition of inviting controversial, provocative, and generally thrilling Canadians. We hear all the time that there are no more public intellectuals and no more generalists, just hyper-professionalized scholars speaking only to other specialists. This leaves a very wide field for Steven Pinker, who has been not just filling it, but expanding it for 20 years since the appearance of his first widely popular book, The Language Instinct. Since then, large books have appeared on a regular basis with titles such as How the Mind Works, The Blank Slate, The Modern Denial of Human Nature, The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined, and coming soon to an online bookstore near you, in fact, right in front of your face, The Sense of Style, The Thinking Person's Guide to Writing in the 21st Century. Steven Pinker has not only engaged a, shall we say, wide range of subjects, but he's done so in a way that stimulates further discussion. He's been involved in an extraordinary number of high-temperature controversies involving some of the most fundamental issues of human existence, and some no less heated but arguably less fundamental, such as the correlation between draft position and performance in the NFL. He's often charged with, quote, straying from his field of expertise or, quote, venturing into subjects he knows nothing about. Some have doubted whether he even has a field at this point, or is just a popularizer and a provocateur with a snappy prose style. Well, Professor Pinker can defend himself as those who have engaged him in debate have discovered. But it's worth noting that all the books that I just mentioned were preceded by 5 books with titles like Visual Cognition, Learnability and Cognition, and Lexical and Conceptual Semantics, an entire career's worth of specialist work. More to the point, I would add that Steven Pinker has found a way not just to translate disciplinary discoveries into a vernacular, but also really to realize the ambition of every discipline, which is to transcend the limitations of disciplinarity and contribute to a more general encout. In so doing, he has embraced the fate of the generalist, which is to make oneself the object of professional criticism, in hopes not just of advancing the discussion, but extending the discussion to a wider public. And as a humanist, I have to say that I'm grateful and somewhat amazed that a man whose training was so rigorously scientific has chosen to contribute to a general account of human history and capabilities. I will not extend this introduction with a list of awards and honors and distinctions. In fact, none of the speakers in tomorrow's panels will receive such introductions. Their accomplishments are sketched out in brochures that you have all received, and if you want more information, you can approach any of our participants, ask them why they are so famous, and I'm sure that they'll be happy to oblige. Speaking of tomorrow's sessions, I want to urge all of you to return tomorrow for what promises to be a really exciting set of discussions, including one in which our guest this evening engages with philosopher Robert Pippin. Steven Pinker is here this evening under the aspect of a Maimandi distinguished visitor, and it's a special pleasure to see here this evening Dr. Asad Maimandi, a great friend of the center, and if I may say so, a man with a great capacity for friendship. I also want to extend a special welcome this evening to those of you who are here for the first time. You could not have picked a better occasion for your introduction to the National Humanities Center, and I hope to see you back here on many other occasions. Stephen? All right.